All right, so how do APIs work? So APIs work by sharing data between applications, systems, and devices through a request and response cycle. So you have a user that initiates a request for data by interacting with an application. So for example, if you look at the diagram below, you have a user that accesses the app to check the weather information from the weather app. And the request is sent to the API, which retrieves the data from the API server, and it sends it back to the user. So if I check my weather app, I'm trying to see if it's snowing tomorrow. I'll check my weather app and I'll make a request for weather data from the weather app to the API server. The API server will give me all the information about the weather. So let me know, is it snowing tomorrow or on Saturday or on Sunday, and give me all that information, and I'll send it back to the weather app that I can see. So that's essentially on a very, very high level how it works. All right, so REST APIs. So what is a REST API? A REST API is a representational state transfer API, and it's a popular API architecture for transferring data over the internet. So there's other ones that are like SOAPs or GraphQL and things along the lines of that. But the most popular one is REST, and that's the one that we're going to be kind of going over today. So in a RESTful context, resources are accessible via endpoints, and operations are performed on those endpoints with standard HTTP methods such as get, post, put, and delete. It's also client-server based, which means that we have a uniform interface that separates the user concerns from the data storage or from the server. So the client domain is only worried about request gathering and worried about the request, and the server is focused on data, getting data, working with the data, and sending it back to the client. So it allows us to separate what the client is worried about and what the server is worried about. And it's also stateless. So, oh, you're good. It's also stateless. So that means that the request from the client to the server has to contain all the information necessary so that the server can understand and process it accordingly. So the server doesn't hold any information about client state. Your client is passing all that information over to the server. All right. So for the next things, we're going to go over the REST API methods, and I'm going to give you it in terms of an analogy. So say we have a Costco warehouse, and we store thousands of different products and have all of that data on a server that we need to access throughout the day. If we have a GET request, this means that we're retrieving data from the server. So in the example of our Costco warehouse, that means we're getting information about, say, a specific object, like milk, in the warehouse. So we might be wondering questions like, how many jugs of milk do we have left in the warehouse? Or where is the milk located in the warehouse? And these are specific things that might be related to the milk object or the milk object representation in our server, and we want to understand and know that. So with a GET request, we can get that information. With a POST request, we're submitting an entity with a specified resource that can cause a change in state or side effects on the server. So this is when we're, say, for example, we're adding a new product to the warehouse. We will make a POST request. So when we're adding this new product or new object, we want to understand what information we might give it. So for example, we might the name of the object or the product, an ID for it, a manufacturer, perhaps a data manufacturing, and other information. So that would be all part of this thing called the body, which we would add to the request when we make a request to give to the server. Next, we have put and patch. So these are two different methods, but they're similar in some cases and not too similar in other points. So they're similar in the fact that they both update a specific resource with the request payload, but put fully updates and patch partially updates. So in the example of our Costco warehouse, and we update the name of a product in the warehouse, put would completely replace the product with the same product, but just a changed name. And patch would only update the name of the product in the warehouse, and it wouldn't change anything else about it. So with put, you're replacing the entire thing, and you're giving it a new object, and you just change the name. But with patch, you're only changing one field in the object. All right, lastly, we have delete. So delete is really simple. It just deletes a specified resource from your server. So for example, if we want to remove a product that we no longer sell, we would simply just delete it. All right. And then now on a very high level, I'm going to go over some different things like status codes. So when you make a REST API request, you'll get certain responses. So you'll get a different status code as a response. So sometimes it'll be like a 100 or a response, a status code starts with a 1, means the information response. So for example, 100 continue. If you get a 2XX or a response that starts with 2, that's a successful response. So if you get a 200 OK, that means that, oh, your response, your request went through successfully and the request was good. If you get a 3XX, it might be a redirection response. So for example, 301 move permanently means that the request that the endpoint that you're hitting is no longer is moved to a different endpoint. So if you have a 4XX, that's a client error response. So for example, you have a really popular 404 not found, and it's like an error on the client side. That's letting you know what happened when you made that request. And you can also have 5XX, which is a server error response, which means that there was an error somewhere on the server side. And a really popular one would be 500 internal server error.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac, for a great introduction and all the explaining. Now I'll take the easy part and I'll explain about the fetch syntax. So fetch is the function that we use to access the API endpoints. And then I mean, all the fetches there does the same thing, but fetch method itself provides a lot of different options, like method where you declare if you want to post, put, delete, or patch, all the things that we just discussed. Mode, headers, body, cache, credentials, all these different things. I'm not going to go over all of them because there's literally like 20 of them, and I'm pretty sure no one wants to sit here going through 20 different headers and options. So, and there's online resources that very well explains them. So it's probably better just search them up whenever you use them. And also another reason that I'm not doing it is realistically, you'll probably only gonna be using like 4-ish max or 5 of these options in daily lives. And that's what I have there in the simplified version. So some very simple API endpoints, you can even do it as like the first one on the right side, which is fetch and then URL. That defaults to like that fetch call is basically calling the API endpoint that's defined by the URL with all the default option, which is a get. So if you want to do get to that URL, you can just do fetch URL. And if it's like a public data endpoint and it doesn't require you to put in any API keys or credentials, then you can simply access like that. If you want to access same endpoint with different methods or something like that, then you would have to declare, or methods that are not get, then you would have to declare them in the method. So you have to write post in this example, or you can also write like patch, delete, all the things. Okay. Another very important thing is that fetch returns a promise of a data, not the data itself. So if you've taken comp sci 310 or something like that, you are probably pretty familiar with the idea of promise. But for those of you who haven't taken the course yet or who need some refresher, promises is basically it's an object that promises you that whatever is passed in will eventually return something. So a lot of cases, calling API endpoints, those operations are pretty expensive and it takes quite a bit of time compared to like arithmetics operations like 1 + 1 is 2. So when we have a fetch call, we want to ensure that whatever the following line of code that uses whatever the object that we fetch from the fetch call to make sure that they wait until we actually receive the data. Or else it's going to rush ahead and trying to do whatever operation with the quote unquote fetch data. And then they're going to be like, oh, there's nothing fetched. And they'll like throw a null pointer error or something like that. So there's two ways of handling promises. The first one is .then, that's the one on the left side, and then the other one is the async await, that's the one on the right side. The two codes that I wrote on the left column and the right column, they basically do the same thing, but they're just different syntaxes. They have different pros and cons. In our demo, we'll mostly be using the right syntax, which is async await, because that's a bit cleaner and we're not doing any crazy like error handling / state change management stuff. So we're just going to use the async await. But basically what it does is telling the code to wait until or tell the code that this fetch function is asynchronous. So whatever that uses the result of this fetch function need to wait and wait for my signal saying like, oh, it actually has either returned or thrown an error or something like that, and then move on. And yeah, if you want to do something like const response equals fetch URL, it's not going to work. You have to have that await in front of it, or else the response variable will be a promise object, not the object that you want. Okay. I know it kind of is like confusing. I think it'll get a bit more clearer when you get to the demo. And honestly, it just comes with the time. So maybe you just need more practice with the async await and promises, but that's not the main point of this workshop. So we're just gliding it over into the top. But yeah, if you want, definitely look more into it. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the difference between calling the API endpoints from the front end versus the back end. So API endpoints can be called in both front end and back end. I guess contrast to the common belief that usually back end is like an API stuff and then front end is like the visual stuff. But the only difference is that you have to be a bit more careful when you're calling API endpoints from the front end, because everything on the front end and on the client side has a potential to be seen by the public. So we don't want to have an API call called from the front end if we have to use API keys or something, some like private information or something that we don't want the general public to see. So for example, if we have that, maybe we have a Shopify or like a personal shopping app, some like product information, it's okay if like everyone sees it. Like they're gonna see it anyways once they log in and everything loads. So those API calls, you can call from the front end. Like all the information that'll be in there, even like product numbers and stuff like that, they're usually not the biggest secret ever. And yeah, thus those they don't have sensitive information, so we can call it from the front end. Compared to that, if you want to call from the back end, those calls usually contain a bit more sensitive information, like patient address, not patient, customer address, or like customer email, password, stuff like that. It can be your own API keys that usually links to all the payment methods and your credit card that you put it in for the API. So you don't want to have that public. And during our demo, we're also not going to show you our API keys. So all those informations you don't want the public to know. So you want to hide it in the back end. In the Shopify example, yeah, as I said, something like customer information, or maybe you're calling Shopify, you paid like a membership or something, and you have the special access that no one else needs to have, something like that. You'll be calling the endpoints from the backend. Okay, before you guys leave, thank you for coming. We'll now dive into the demo portion. So I hope by this point everyone has done the pre-workshop material and have everything set up. If you are having any trouble, feel free to message into the Discord chat or in the Zoom chat, and someone's gonna help you. But yeah, if you have set up everything correctly, hopefully, then you'll be able to see the same thing as I'm seeing. all the files on the, I guess the 6 files on the left side. Quickly going over index.html, you will not have to worry about. It just has the front end information. Index.js, you also will not be working directly with this file, but it just defines all the button clicks and stuff like that. The API.js, this is the file that you will mostly be working with. And then the secrets.js JSON file that I'll not be clicking in because my API key is there. That one, it has this JSON object that has like the API key object with an empty string. You should have your own OpenAI API key populated into that empty string, so it shouldn't be empty anymore. But then style.css is the CSS file for the front end. Okay, so to get started, let's try to boot up the front end first. So if we have made everyone download the HTTP, HTTP server npm package, and when and if you have downloaded that package globally, you can go into the directory, which is probably nwHacks 2024 Intro to API directory, and run the server. It will run server here. And you can follow any of these 3 links. You can control click, and you should be able to see this to this page. So this one is that we just pre-populated it. So we can just focus strictly on the API part. But yeah, again, like feel free to ask questions if you don't see this page. Okay, and actually I'll do it a bit differently because my laptop has been going a bit interesting, but it shouldn't change anything for rest of you guys. Okay, so from here, quick overview of what we'll be doing. We'll be trying to do 3 endpoints. So get models, it's like the most standard get request. This one will be fill in the blanks. We have already written the basic fetch syntax there, and we'll go together and do one by one to fill in the blanks to make the get models work. And then we're going to do post chat, which is kind of what everyone's excited about, asking GPT question. And then there's post moderation, which is going to be a bit more creative and fun, hopefully, for everyone at the end. So let us get started with the get models. Right now, it shouldn't be doing anything. You can click the show models button, but it's not going to do anything. So let's go back to the VS Code and let's get started. So if you go into the api.js file, there will be this endpoint1 comment here. And everything in this get models function is the stuff that we are going to work with. So to do here, fill in the fetch call. So add URL is clearly not the real URL. So we need to add the correct URL. So the fetch call knows which endpoint to get to. Which URL are we going to get to? So to get the URL that we want to fetch, go back to the front end. We have already kind of linked all the endpoint documentations here. So we want to do the get model. So let's click get model here. Yeah, so it takes us to the OpenAI documentation. And if you want to work with API endpoints often in the future, you probably do want to get used to looking into documentations on your own. Documentations has really good information on the API endpoints. So for example, here list models, we do get with this URL endpoint. So we're going to copy this. And it also gives you example requests and example responses here. That is really helpful to take a note of. Okay, anyways, so we're going to copy this URL. You don't need to copy the get part, just the URL. And then we're going to go back to the API file and then replace this add URL with the with the URL we just copied. So that's going to be the endpoint that we'll be accessing. Next thing we need to define is, though the default is get, so we don't need this method, for the better practice, we want to define the method. So here we want to get the list of models. So we'll define it as get as a method. And then authorization, you don't need to touch anything, but just to explain it, this one is where you're going to tell the API that you are authorized to access this endpoint by this API key, which is the key you put into the secret.json file. And then the content type means you don't really need it for the get endpoints, but in the future, if you want to do post or put or something like that, the content type defines how your body will be structured. So in this case, it'll be a JSON. So in the future, if you want to do for the next two endpoints that we'll be doing, you need to define this, or I guess it defaults to application JSON, but yeah, if you want to do anything other than JSON, you definitely need to define it. Okay. That's that. And then fill in rest of the function. So we'll see. So this one, we have models at this point. We have the response. We just need to pass in the parameter to this update model list function, which is, you don't need to worry about all this HTML stuff, but basically this function takes in the resulting data of the API endpoint and lists them on the front end. So to this, if we just do models and save, you can see that it's actually not going to work. And the reason is, you can go to the inspect element. If people don't know how to do that, you can right click and click inspect here. Or I think there is a shortcut, which is like Control F5 or something like that. But yeah, right click inspect elements. And here in the console, we actually see that, see an error here, which is, it might be a bit hard to see, but it just says models, the for each is not a function, which means we passed in the wrong thing. So the models that we passed in is not iterable, is what it's saying. And the reason is, go to the network tab, which is where all the fun things regarding the API endpoints happen. Here. It also tells you all the responses here. And when you see the response itself, it's an object. So what we really want is this data attribute, which is the list of models. And that's what we really want to iterate through and show, right? So instead of just doing the models here, we need to do models.o. Models.data to get that data attribute from the response. The response body usually also includes something like, yeah, response code, the data, if there is any other like metadata relating to it. So it has a lot of other things other than data. So you always have to declare that you really want specifically that data. Okay, so save it. And then let's go back and see if it works. Okay, see it works. Okay, everyone hard refresh, which is like refreshing with the little circle on the top. And then click show models. And if everything's done correctly, you should be able to see, okay, here, in case someone needs to refer to it while I do my spiel. Yeah, you should be able to see the list of all the models that you can use to, I guess, call more endpoints within the OpenAI on the left side. And if you go to the response tab here, yeah, as you see, you can see the all the list, which is basically all the things that we are seeing on the left side. So yeah, usually when there is an error, the response it'll be red. And if everything's going well, it's gonna be green. And that's kind of how you know if the problem is like something on the front end or something on the API call side and all that. Up until here, is someone having anyone
Yeah,
have
there's one question about how do you update the page again? I saved and hard refresh, but still got the original page.
Oh, interesting. I would you can try clearing the cache, which is if you're on Chrome, on the top left side, right beside the address bar, there's where you can go manage an on-site data and delete save data. You can try clearing cache. If it doesn't work, you can try to use the live server extension instead. I'll send the extension into the chat in case someone is having trouble and wants to try that out instead. But while we do that, I'll now pass it on to Isaac to go over the next two next endpoint.
Great. All right. So as you can see here, we have finished the first one. I'm just gonna set up on my end. All right. So we just did the get models one. So now we'll be doing the create chat one, which is a really fun one. So here we're working with very similar idea. Pretty much what we need to be doing is we need to create that fetch call, but this time it's going to be a post call, right? So how it starts out first is we're going to write this out similar to before. And what you can actually do is, and what I usually do is I just take what I have existing and I just copy it over and I just change it as we go. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to copy it over here. So we know that we want to use the create chat one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up here. I'm going to open up my post chat. And we'll see here, create chat completion. So you'll see post and you'll see the endpoint that we're working with here. And in chat or with post requests, you're going to also have to do a little bit different. It'll be a little bit different than the get one. So I'm going to start off, I'm just going to copy this endpoint and we're going to go back here. I'm going to replace this URL. Oh, shoot. Copy, paste. And now I have my URL here. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to change the method to post. All right, so that's the first part set up. And we can leave the headers part the same. But the part that changes here is that we're going to be adding this thing called a body. So the body, or the request payload, is where we store all the information that we need to pass in. So let me turn off my Copilot so it doesn't do that. And I'll type this in. So we're going to have body, and a body is usually going to be a JSON object. So we're going to be using JSON.stringify. So it'll look something like this, JSON.stringify. And we're going to create our JSON object inside here. So if we look back here, you'll see that the example request lets us just send in your post request. And it's up to you. Most of these are optional and they kind of change things up depending on what you're looking to do. So for example, you might have something like temperature, which lets you determine how random your outputs are going to be, where higher values like 0.8 will be make the output more random, and lower values like 0.2 will make it more focused and deterministic. So there's a lot of different optional parameters that you can add to your request to change things up. But the only things that we really need are just messages and model. So that's what we're going to be doing. So if I go back here, we go to body here, and I'm going to define my model. And lucky for us, we know what models we can work with because we just did the list models. So I can use GPT-3.5-turbo as my model, which is not too expensive. And then I'm going to create, or I'm going to define my messages parameter here. So with messages, we know that it is simply just an array of objects here that are defined here, and they have the values row and content. So we can see what a potential system message object might look like, and it just needs to have a content and a row. So in this case, system. For user message, it will have the properties of content and row, and in this case, user. So this lets us know what kind of objects we can pass into this array. So with that information, let's define our messages. So first one we're going to do is going to be row, and it's going to be system. And I'm going to set the content to, you are a helpful assistant. And then, now that I've done that one, I'm going to create another message. So this time I'm going to create a user message. So row, and difference is we're going to set it to user. And the content will be help me win a hackathon. And with that, we're also going to add one more. And this is going to be where we're going to be able to add our own input from a text box into the API request. So just like before, row, and it's going to be user. Very quickly, what we're doing here in this fetch request, we're sending in a post request here, and it's going to be hitting this chat completion endpoint. We're using the model GPT 3.5 Turbo, and we're passing in an array of messages ahead of time. So if you think about how you usually use GPT or ChatGPT, the system itself is already predefined, like the chat you're talking to. And this is just saying that I've already sent, you can treat it like I've already sent this message beforehand. So I sent in this message earlier saying, help me win a hackathon. And this is my next message saying exactly what I want to know, right? So that's the fetch request. And now we need to fill in the rest of the function. So the rest of the function will need to get our chat object, our object, right? So just like before, I'm gonna go back up here and copy this over. And we're gonna change this to chat. And we make sure we always add the await response.json. And then we need to do update answer box. And what we're going to use is we're going to use this function that we've already predefined for you, update answer box. We're going to put that right here. And we're going to add our parameter. So our parameter here is going to be chat dot, it's going to be chat, but it's also going to look a little bit different. So actually what I'm going to do before we move on is let's go over how we would know exactly what to pass in to the answer box here. So if we want to pass in data, sometimes you'll get like a object and it might not be exactly the data that we want, right? So for instance, if we look here, you can see the response on this side. And it lets us know exactly what is going to be outputted from this endpoint. So usually what I like to do is I'll look at this, I'll see what it gives me. So we know there's ID, there's an object, created, all this information. And actually, all we really care about here is this one line, content. So this is the response from the GPT model in response to the messages that we've already passed in. So actually, all we really care about is getting this. We don't care about anything else here. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to do chat dot, let's see, choices. And we know choices is a list here, indicated by square brackets, choices. And then we want the first one, and then dot message dot content. Nice. So by doing that, we'll be able to get exactly what we need. And as a kind of thing that I also like to do is if I don't really know exactly what I'm getting, or I'm forgot to read the docs sometimes, which does happen, what you can also do is you can simply do console.log, and you can do console.log.chat, and you can just see exactly what's in that object. And I'll give you all that information. So if I forgot to do something, I'll just console.log the object that I get back from my response, and I'll take a look at that in inspect element and figure out exactly what I need to be working with or what data I need to manipulate. So I'm gonna save this. I have HTTP server running already. So let's go back here and open up here, and I'm gonna do a hard refresh. So you can either click on this, or on Mac, I do Command-Shift-R, and it does a hard refresh. I'm gonna open up my inspect element over here, and let's see if I got it to work. So post chat. So what's a good question to ask? What project should I build to win a hackathon? And I'm gonna click generate response, and I got an error. Let's see. I did not provide an API key. That's a great point. So let me go back and do that. All right. I'm gonna pause share real quick so I can put that in so no one can see my API key. All right, we're back. So now that that's in, let's try this again. So do a hard refresh, and I'm gonna say, what project should I build to win a hackathon? And generate response. That's so weird. API key.
Are you also having a server refresh problem?
This is weird. I don't know why this is just working. It says my API key. It can't read my API key.
Gonna try restarting the HTTP server.
Yeah, let me try that real quick. That might be why. The server. Okay. Test. Nope. API key in the header. So this can also happen. It's there. Let me see. Did I not save it?
Did you put in secrets.json or secrets1.json?
I have it in secrets.json.
Okay. For sure. Okay.
I'm gonna try it one more time.
Okay. Worst case, I'll you can stop sharing and I'll
Yeah.
take over.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to just take it back?
I bet.
I can't. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I will stop sharing here.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Okay, I would like to let everyone know that this is not reflective of our coding abilities. Isaac is a great programmer. Just life is life in time to time. Right. Let's see. I basically here export async function create chat. Okay. So it should be similar or same as what how much Isaac has gone. Let me go live again. And yeah, let's see how it works here. So just double checking get models work. Okay. And then how or what project should I build for nwHacks? Hopefully it knows what nwHacks is. Then we wait for a bit because usually GPT does a whole lot of yapping. Unless it didn't work. Oh, awesome. It worked. Okay. Yeah, as I said, it said a lot of things, but I'm pretty sure these are very important and valuable information about the project you should be building and nwHacks. Well, I hope so if they're giving us like a whole paragraph. But okay, yeah, I hope everyone was able to get to this point. And for those who haven't been following the chat, if you're having similar problem as Isaac or a lot of other people in the chat right now, who's basically you save everything and refreshing it, but it's not refreshing for some reason, try the live server code extension or VS Code extension. It seems like that one has been working for a couple people. So yeah, and if you're going too fast, don't worry. The video is recorded, and the finished completed code will be in the GitHub as well, so you guys can refer to it later. So don't sweat too much. But yeah, okay, sounds good. Let's move on to the last one. The last API here is the post moderations. So it might be not super obvious what this does, but basically what it does is we're going to type in a sentence in this input box, and we're going to check if whatever the sentence we put in violates OpenAI's content policy. So if you say like, oh my God, the world is perfect, I love you, I love everyone, of course it's going to pass the content policy. If you say something a bit more violent and sussy and stuff that I probably would rather not be in recording, it'll probably not going to pass the content moderation. So we're going to do that. And with this one, we will let everyone try it out on their own first, and especially because you guys can go as wild as you want with the questions you ask, and do it on your own device. So yeah, we'll give you, let's see, like, I don't know, 10-ish minutes. Is that enough? Because this is like basically
That's enough time.
yeah, we have
Yeah.
10,
So
we'll give you 10 minutes until 8:35 to try it on your own, and then we can do it together, and we'll kind of call it a day from there. And in case someone has missed the endpoint too, since it's pretty similar, I'll have it up on the screen. But yeah, try to give it a try first. Create. Um, We'll post the slides into the Intro to API Discord channel. As I actually, can you get that done now?
Yep, let me add that for you guys.
Okay, it's 8:35. So in order to finish this workshop in time, let's get started again. So what we're gonna do is I'm actually I guess the thing is, you see how the second endpoint we did, it was post chat, and then the third endpoint we're doing is post moderation. They're both post call. And what that usually means is I'm going to copy and paste this entire fetch call into the third endpoint to start with. And I'm doing that with no shame because that's exactly what I'm going to be doing if I were to be coding to save some time. So I'll just copy the fetch call here over here. And then, yeah, we'll get started. So basically the same thing. We want to first check if the API endpoint is correct. And to do that, you can go here, API reference. And the moderation is basically the same API minus it ends with moderation. So let's copy and paste the URL here. Okay. Methods is still a post method, so we're going to keep it here. Authorization, your API key should be still the same. And then content type, we still want to pass in the JSON as a body, so we're going to keep it as the same. And the body that we will be passing in, we don't need to pass in all these crazy things for this one, thankfully. So we'll rewrite the body that we'll be passing in. If you look at the API reference here, it only takes one input, which is, oh wow, that's a wild statement. But anyways, yeah, only take one input, which is the question you want to ask or the sentence in question. So here we're gonna do the same thing as what's given in the example and the documentation, which is input. And here we're gonna use the input text. And if you're wondering what input text is, it's basically an argument that's passed into the moderate chat, which is we get this from the front end. So if you type in whatever into the text box, it'll go into the input text. So we want the input to be whatever the text we type in, which is the input text here. And we cannot forget to do the const, basically turn whatever the response into the JSON. Let's say const moderation is JSON. Yeah. And then what we need to do is this one will right now, if we were to save and call the API endpoints, it's going to return all the correct things, but it's not going to do anything to the front end because we didn't told it to do anything yet. So we want to use the check moderation function that we already created for you. And what it does is based on the response that we put it in, it's going to turn the background color of the input box into either red or green. Okay, so check moderation, and then yeah, what we want to put in, let's do I'll just go straight to the answer because you guys should have known this. Okay, moderation dot results, and then if you actually see the network tab, you'll be able to see the results is an array. So you want to take the first element of the result, and out of that first object of the result that you got, you specifically want flagged. And this shouldn't be too difficult to figure out because this is the only field that's returned by the endpoint that is Boolean, and we take Boolean over here. So yeah, this should basically call the API endpoint and check if the sentence I put in is does pass the OpenAI moderation. And if it does, the text color input box should turn into green. And then if it doesn't, it should turn into red. So let's try that. Here, we'll first say, I love humanity. Humans are the best. Something like that. And then we check moderation. Okay, yeah, OpenAI is happy with my sentence and gives me the green. And okay, I mean, y'all can try all the hideous things you want to try, but I will, because I don't want to get canceled, I'll take the example directly from the API documentation. And what I'm about to type is by no means representative of how I think about humanity. But I'm gonna type this in and check moderation. And this one doesn't pass OpenAI's moderation, and thus the input box turned red. Okay, so that's everything we have. Let me go back to the slides. Thank you for coming, and we will the workshop ends here, but if you still have questions, concerns, or if something's not working, feel free to still send your questions into the Discord channel, and we should be able to answer those even after our workshop. And I don't know exactly when the workshop recordings will be posted, but it's being recorded as well. So in the future, if you want to go back to it and refer to it, you can always do that. The slides, you can also find it in the Discord channel, as well as the GitHub repository. And in the GitHub, we'll do it again, but actually in the commit history, if you search well enough, you'll find the answer keys there as well.
We'll push the answer key to the repo.
Yeah, we'll push it to the repo. So if someone was having a hard time following for whatever reason, you can also refer to the answer key in the future as well. Yeah, thank you so much for coming, and hope everyone's staying warm during this cold winter snowy night. And to stay connected, the URL or the QR code links to our socials, and we will have a lot of updates leading up to and after nwHacks. So you probably want to follow it. And yeah, that's everything for today. Thank you for giving us your time in a very precious Thursday evening, and hope everyone have a great rest of your day.